Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for jumping in on this live stream, and I'm sure people will be joining as we go along, but we're just going to jump in. It's kind of cool, live streams. It seems like more people just watch them because they were live, even though they're not live by the time they watch it.
Yeah, it's more exciting to click on than, it's pre-recorded, this is past, right?
Yeah, but this is uncut. And so we're doing this for a couple reasons. First of all, we just want to just kind of remind you of some really cool things coming up if you're part of Evangel's community or if you want to be a part of Evangel's community. And then secondly, we want to really kind of just recap the conversation we had last week around COVID and all things related to COVID vaccines and whatnot. So there was quite a bit of traction and interest around that, so we thought it'd be good to kind of follow up. First, Jimmy, tell us what's happening on Sunday.
All right, this Sunday, everything that's happening this Sunday or just one aspect?
What are you excited about?
Okay, here's some things that are happening this Sunday. This Sunday, we have been calling it Super Sunday, but we're thinking of changing that name, right?
Yeah, we're playing around with it, yeah.
Because super implies that our other Sundays are not super, and they are super. Every Sunday is super. Every Sunday at Evangel is super.
Especially the Super Sunday.
Yeah. We're calling this Special Sunday. And it's special because of two things that I can think of. You guys can add more. Number one is we are doing baptisms. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we have 5,
yeah,
7,
and that we're not sure. There's still
4 to 8 baptisms we have this Sunday. And as always, we put the tank right here. And so we want to let you guys know, if you still want to get baptized or know somebody that wants to get baptized, we have all been baptized. You are simply...
text them.
Yeah.
Text them.
We are all baptized, right? You guys are?
I'm baptized.
Baptisms are always such a rad Sunday. It is such a rad Sunday. Extra family and friends come. It's a good party Sunday. And the second thing is, so text us if you want to get baptized, or you've been thinking about it, or you just have more questions about baptism and what it is and what it entails and how long we hold you under for.
So text us at 250-785-3386.
Yes.
Yeah.
The church phone number. And the second thing is, drum roll please, everybody. Kids City is happening this Sunday. I repeat, turn to your neighbor and say, Kids City is happening this Sunday. Turn to that person in the car while you're driving, and you shouldn't be watching this, and say, Kids City is happening this Sunday. We're doing a Kids City event / fun / service / awesome this Sunday. And there's also going to be Kids City Junior, and there's also going to be nursery. And we just want to say we're toying kind of with ideas. We're as a staff team, we're playing with different ideas of how it's going to look. So we aren't viewing this as like a Kids City kickoff, and you're going to see the mascot Bruce the Moose every time, but it's just kind of a one-off Kids City for the Super Sunday, and then we're going to see what happens after this.
Well, right after the Super Sunday. Oh, did I say super? Special.
There's going to be another Super Sunday.
There's going to be another
homecoming.
Special Sunday.
Let's call it the homecoming.
I like the homecoming.
I like that.
If I was to choose,
I just came up with that.
If I was to choose a name for this Sunday, I'd say homecoming.
Okay, let's call it.
Okay.
This is the homecoming.
Why?
On homecoming Sunday.
Why are we calling it homecoming?
I don't know. It's because we're kind of coming to this point where we're telling the house, and we know lots of you guys are still live streaming from home, and that's an awesome thing. And so you're not necessarily here every week. That if you're going to pick a Sunday to come on the homecoming Sunday because
come home.
Because it's going to be a great Sunday. We're going to, like Jimmy was saying, we're going to do baptisms.
We'd love to see you.
There's going to be a great kids element, and we're going to tell some stories. You're going to hear some crazy stories of what God has been doing through our house, and so it's going to be a really
from around the nation,
super celebration type Sunday. Yeah.
I like homecoming. Pound. Let's settle on that because we value the home church, but this Sunday we're saying, get out here. It's going to be good.
Yeah,
everyone
for sure.
Come.
Yeah, if you can. I mean, obviously, we're going to be live streaming on Sunday too, so you can catch it that way too. But yeah, it'll be good. Okay, that was the first thing we wanted to talk about. The second was if you're interested in the mentoring test drive, we call it discipleship mentoring test drive. You can really easily find information at our website, evangelfsj.com. And if you have signed up already, just want to let you know that you will hear from us in the next week or two at the most, where we'll be putting people into new mentoring clusters. And it's really exciting. I think there's possibly 2 or 3 new clusters kicking off. We have about 6 to 8 going on right now in our church. They're all starting this week, and it's such a good journey. So that's something to keep in mind. The last thing, just kind of by way of announcements, is tomorrow is, as most of you probably are aware, Truth and Reconciliation Day, a new federal holiday in our city. And we thought it would just be good just to say something about that. And we've obviously been watching along with you some of the news things that have been happening across our nation as concerns residential schools and some of the discoveries on those residential schools. And our hearts are definitely for truth and reconciliation, for sure. In fact, we think they're actually very biblical values. And when you think of celebrating truth and reconciliation, for us as Christians, I think, wouldn't we all agree that that's definitely something we want to celebrate? We would say truth and mercy need to be mixed together, and that's what brings reconciliation. And so our hearts as a church community are definitely for our First Nations brothers and sisters, and for the country at large that are kind of grappling with some of these realities. And if we do nothing else, we want to be a church, I think, that prays and that prays that there is reconciliation that comes in our country. Okay, let's talk about the conversation we had on Sunday. So we kind of opened a bit of a bombshell, but like I said earlier, it was actually, there was lots of traction from you that were here in person and from you that were online, and then people that were viewing it afterwards. Just because nobody seems to be talking about this whole thing from the angle of we disagree, but we're learning how to get along in spite of it. And I made a comment that we don't agree up here. We're all on staff here at Evangel. We're the staff pastors here at Evangel, but we don't all agree on everything around COVID. And we've had meetings where we've had to really wrestle through things like, is the vaccine mandate legit? Should it be mandatory? What should we do with the regulations that are coming from the government? The efficacy of the vaccines. How deadly is COVID? I mean, all those things that you've been wrestling with. And this is the truth. I've heard so many stories of family units that are being split down the line because of different viewpoints on this. We are getting word of churches that are actually splitting over these issues, which is insane. I think, and I made a comment on Sunday, and I'm going to let you guys jump in here, but I made a comment that the world is under more trauma now than it's ever been before. And some of the outplay of the trauma that we're under is these divisive things, relationships breaking apart. Shalene Mitchell, who is a part of our church community and also a counselor, sent me an email she doesn't know I'm doing this, so she's going to watch this and be like, what? My name's being mentioned? But she sent me an email and she said there's 2 types of trauma. And it was so brilliant, this email she gave me. So she said there's 2 types. The one type where we more commonly think of trauma as when something bad happens to you. You're in a car accident. You have some kind of domestic abuse issue or whatever. And so that's that kind of trauma. And we mostly think of trauma and post-traumatic stress syndrome related to that kind of trauma. It's more of a direct trauma. But then she said the other kind of trauma is when you have the absence of necessary good things in your life. And that could be you grew up in a home where you didn't ever have physical touch in a good, healthy way from your parents, or you maybe didn't get the affirmation you needed from your father. There's a whole list of things that are necessary good things in our lives. And so Shalene's comment was what's happening in COVID is that second kind of trauma on high speed. That so many of us in the season we're in have the absence of necessary good things, like connection with people. Like we had a lunch here, and it was so good just to interact with people, and you realize, man, have I ever missed that? And so I thought that was a good way of looking at it, because some of us are like, this hasn't been that traumatic for me, but there has been a level of trauma just from the absence of things, community, interaction with people. People are in the hospital dying without any social support other than the incredible doctors and nurses that are there, but they don't have any family near them because there's of the restrictions and isolation and all that. So So we're in that right now, and it's a big deal. So we're trying to kind of work our way through it. We're as a church, we're committed to walking out together, and I think part of it is just learning how to love on each other in spite of our differences.
Well, to add to that, trauma too is like we were never designed or meant to carry the amount of trauma in our world today, but because of social media, because of the news, we are seeing all these things that are happening, and we weren't designed to handle all of that, plus our own trauma. So if I can just add that as an extra point to trauma.
Yeah, it's very real, and we're all feeling it. Like we've been talking about how, just even this last week, how it feels like there just seems to be a fog that it seems like everybody's kind of under, and blasé, kind of, that feeling you might get on a Saturday when you just don't feel like doing anything because you had such a long week, and it just feels like culture seems to be permeated with this, fogginess. And
I just want to say, you kind of mentioned the value of the community walking through trauma, and I think there's an invitation for all of us, because we all experience trauma, but there's actually, I think, healing available to us in each other if we walk with other people. I'm just thinking of myself. I grew up in a family where I was really lacking fatherly touch, physical touch, or even emotional. And so I experienced lots of trauma in that way. And when I came to Canada, when I married my wife, and coming into this family that was so different from mine, it was a healthy family, where there's lots of physical touch and
amazing family that you married into.
That was actually that brought a lot of healing for me. Just being in a place where people are whole, where the family is healthy, and I experienced healing there. So I think as a church community, yes, we're going through trauma, but we have an opportunity to, encourage each other and actually help heal from all of this. So as a church community, I just encourage you to, if you know someone who's struggling, man, at least, send them a text message. Ask them how they're doing. Ask them how you can pray for them. Maybe they want to go for a walk, for coffee. Get involved.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So, like in the way we've had to work through disagreements, and we kind of touched on that on Sunday, so I don't think we need to go back into the things we disagree on. But I was thinking, guys, that one of the things that we have done, I think, really well is focused, instead of focusing on the things that divide us, focusing on the things that bring us together. Right. And that is probably the best way. Just if you're ever talking with somebody who's irately argumentative, disagreeing with you on everything, or has really strong views that are opposite of yours, one of the best ways to move forward is just to find commonality with them and kind of go, okay, where's our common ground? Let's get on some common ground together, and then we can start to kind of branch out. And I just was thinking, what do you guys think is our common ground as leaders here in our church when it comes to the season we're in? We've been going through, and that we're still in, and we don't have any. There's no sign of getting out of this anytime soon. Mm-hmm. What do you think are those common? Do you want me to give you multiple choice?
Yeah, multiple choice.
Do you want to go from the most important, the most essential one to
sure
non-essential?
What do you think is the most essential common thing that brings us together?
Well, I think for us, at least, we believe in the same God. I mean, I think it's important.
Yeah, hey,
Yeah.
you're right there.
But that's not, it's not just that we believe in God. People can believe in God and still, have conflict. It's that we know the character of God, who He is. And I think that He's compassionate and gracious and merciful. And that kind of creates this common ground for us of how we relate to each other. The Bible says that we we should be forgiving others because Christ forgiven us. I think
Yeah.
knowing that, like that, having that relationship with Jesus actually creates a common ground for us.
Yeah.
I think with that too, I don't know if this is like part of the common ground, but I often think like as Christians, so we disagree. Our staff disagrees. Our church disagrees. People disagree. Like there's so many opinions and views out there. But as Christians, the common ground, obviously like Vadim says, God, correct answer. And it's also that we know how this story ends. We know who wins, you know?
Yep.
Like I think thinking long term, and I didn't get a chance to say this on Sunday, but thinking long term, thinking, there's been lots of talk about the end times and the mark of the beast, and it's here, and it's like, oh, what's going to happen? You know, if you take the vaccine, then it's going to be 666 and all this stuff. But I think thinking the end times, we know who wins, we know who loses. Jesus wins. The devil loses.
Yeah.
It does end very good. And then thinking, what are the non-negotiables, and who do I want to be when I know who wins? What kind of arguments do I want to get caught up in when I know who ultimately wins? Do I want to be a fearful person? Do I want to know every single fact about the last election or the vaccine or whatever it is when you actually know who wins? So I think when you say like common ground, I think whether we know it or not, that is a huge common ground. That it's like, well, all said and done, we do know how this ends. And that's not like a fatalistic view. That's
It's a hope-filled.
it's a hope-filled,
Yeah.
victorious, Jesus wins view. And who do I want to be as Jesus is winning out? You know, as Jesus is returning, and as it's all coming to a peak, and for the second arrival of Jesus, right? So I think that's a huge common ground that
That's good.
I think that's
links
huge.
us.
That's huge, and it hits on another issue that I think I've kind of picked up in my Christian circles with friends and have seen in myself is this hopeless, despairing view.
Yes.
That honestly, if we're like really honest about this, like the Christian should be the one with the most hope in the room.
Yeah.
Every single time. And so I think that's a really good way of looking at it, Jimmy. It's like, here's our common ground. Well, first of all, Jesus is our common ground. How many times have we said that in the last year? We've had to remind ourselves, guys, what brings us together as a church is not a belief about a disease. That has nothing to do with what draws us together. It's Jesus as the central
as a
component.
non-negotiable.
Yeah, and reminding ourselves of that, and maybe some of us need to do that in our friendships with other Christians, is to go, wait a sec, we still have the same Lord here. But I love the way you brought that into like a hope perspective too. That's our common ground. We believe that devil's been defeated.
Yeah.
Jesus will be victorious. Heaven will invade earth.
Which also helps you to see and understand who the enemy is. It's not your, fellow brother or sister or people on the streets or officials on the screen of the TV. It's the enemy who is the devil, who's been there from the beginning, who's a master of lies, and who's going to be defeated at the end. So I think what you said, just having that perspective actually helps us to stay on track as we're plowing through these difficult times.
Right, which is probably the second biggest common ground, is that we know who's behind this. That's what we were talking about on Sunday.
So
It's not the government.
right, not each other.
It's not each other. It's not the political system. It's not the health system. It's not the police officer. It's not the pastor. It's not your coworker. We know as Christians who's behind this because of Ephesians 6. We know the devil's behind this, and we know the kinds of things that the devil likes to do. Disunity, lies, fear, despair, depression, desolation, all these things, right?
Yep.
So it's like that's a common ground that it's like, wait, hold up. Okay, there may be varying opinions about all this stuff, but it's like if we can, A, recognize Jesus wins, and Jesus holds us together, and two, that the devil is actually behind this, beneath this, just bringing all this despair and worry and depression and stuff.
Yeah.
And gets us out of focus.
Yeah.
totally out of focus.
Yeah.
I can't help but think that if you had a conversation with somebody who disagreed with you, and I'm assuming there's some kind of faith background for them, that if you could just get around those three common things first and foremost, would all the rest of the differences seem a little bit less in your face? I mean, they're still real, right? But
Yes,
if you
not
could come,
belittling them,
it's
yeah.
Jesus. Jesus is, we believe in Jesus, we believe in God the Father, we believe in the Son, we believe in the Spirit. The second thing is we believe that this ends well. The third thing, we believe there's an enemy behind it. I just think like you get those things out and you say, let's land on this common ground that it kind of makes the other things, they're still there and they're still important, but they're not the life and death issues that they were previously.
Yeah.
Okay, let's transition here. I mean, into this final piece, and it's we're in a spiritual war. We're in a spiritual war, and we really believe that there's an evil behind all of this that's happened in COVID, and we don't think it's any particular government. We don't think it's the Chinese government. We don't think it's mishandling here by our government officials. We just don't think that. We think it actually is a principality and power that's behind it. And of
Right.
course,
Do we think there's been abuse? Probably. Very likely.
Sure.
Do we think
Yes.
like all those things, right?
yeah.
Like, we aren't saying all these countries or the politicians have been, completely above reproach,
Absolutely not.
right?
There's been, I mean, like obviously the enemy uses people.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the only way he can operate in the world is through people. But it's still recognizing that he's behind it. And we hit on that a little bit on Sunday. We were talking about the fog. We were talking about the discouragement that's come. Is there anything particular that you guys have experienced that you would say over the last 2 years has been kind of how the enemy has attacked you through this whole season? And then I wouldn't mind talking about how we've pushed past that, because I didn't feel like we touched on that enough on Sunday. Is how do you combat these attacks? Were you going to say something, Sarah?
Well, I think anytime I'm feeling anxious, that's a clear sign that I am maybe listening to lies of the enemy. I think that's how he attacks me, is through these lies and, am I doing the right thing? Am I doing the wrong thing? And the fear. Right away, I think, and sometimes I don't recognize it quick enough, but I'll go out throughout the day, my day will just kind of spiral. And then I'll realize that I have actually been listening to the lies of the enemy. And that's where he gets me off focus. And so to be able to recognize those times for me is huge. I mentioned Sunday, something that you had talked about on a Sunday with the lion and the stool, and how a trainer will get the lion to look at the 3 points of the stool to distract him. And I totally think that the enemy in this season would love to get us out of focus and ruffle our feathers and get us out of peace and into anxiety and fear. And really that kind of thing, it cripples us. It cripples us. And to be able to recognize that. So for me to just stop, and then sometimes I just recognize it and I say, okay, what's the truth in this? And sometimes we'll do that together and help each other out. We'll be like, are you listening to lies here? And believe the truth.
I was going to say, I think like if I ask myself, like what you're saying, like if I ask myself, am I in anxiety? There's a good indicator that that's a warning light that I'm not in a good place. If I'm not being full on attacked by the enemy, I'm certainly not submitted to God, because when I'm submitted to God, this is this passage in Isaiah. It says that God will guard your heart and mind, and the peace of God will guard your heart and mind in Christ Jesus. Is that Philippians 4? Somewhere in there. But it's not just a case of like asking myself, is this fear? Ask yourself this question: is this fear driving me into the peace of God?
Right.
If it's not, because I think sometimes your fear can actually drive you into a desperate kind of prayer that's still not the peace of God.
Right.
But the Bible says when we fix our eyes on Jesus, he actually brings us into a place of peace. So you ask yourself, is the feelings and the things I'm believing right now, is it driving me into the peace of God? I mean, there can still be stressful things, and you can still pray an intense prayer, but you've got this internal anchor point, you know?
I thought somebody brought it up, maybe Vadim on Sunday, is that when we go through these things, sometimes there's something in our past that we need to deal with and get healed up from in order to approach the future in the right mindset and recognize those lies a little quicker.
Right. Yeah, it was the whole idea of the difference between symptoms and the sickness. The symptoms are these superficial things that are showing up and then going away. So like, discontentment, hate, anger, lack of joy. They kind of show up, confuse us, bring fog, disillusionment, and then they're gone. But the sickness, the underlying issue, if we try to deal with symptoms, never goes away until we actually deal with it. And dealing with those things, that's hard work, first of all. That requires you to be, again, connected to Jesus, connected to his peace, not being driven by fear, anxiety.
Yeah, in other words, you can't deal with that inner whatever it is, wound or whatever, by having a Big Mac or going to Disneyland is not going to help, right? I think that's a really important point to bring out is if you're looking at the last 2 years and you're like, I've experienced trauma, just don't have any expectation that a holiday is going to fix that. It's going to take a much larger level of intentionality, I think, of walking that through. And one of the ways we do that as a team, I know each of these guys here, is by spending regular time, quiet time. We call it meditation, or sometimes call it daily devos, where you're spending time with God and you're asking him questions like this. Is there anything that I need to repent of? Is there anything that you want to touch in my life or you want to bring restoration? And that's just the starting point. I mean, there's a lot of other pieces of that puzzle. Sometimes it means seeing somebody that can help you walk through it from the outside in. As a counselor, but it takes a level of intentionality. But I think our world tries to fix that thing, through a workout or through buying something new, and it is not gonna work. Starbucks.
Speaking of.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So just let's end this talk. We just have a couple minutes here. I want to be done maybe in about 5 minutes. But what are some of the things you guys have found to be effective in walking through some of the trauma and some of the everyday crap of the last 2 years, and especially relevant considering we're still in it?
Yeah, John Eldredge wrote a book called Get Your Life Back, and chapter 2 of that book, I just took 7 days and I didn't escape. I detached out to the Sicanee, chasing elk. And chapter 2 of this book is called Benevolent Detachment. You guys know what benevolent means?
Good?
Yes, well-meaning or kindly. And I know that because I just Googled it 2 seconds ago. I was like, what does it actually mean? I need to look smart because I want to talk about this. Benevolent detachment. And let me say this first. The opposite of benevolent detachment is we have all seen, especially if you have kids, Let It Go, the Frozen.
Oh,
right?
And that's a good song, isn't it?
And it's a great, catchy song. But I think how basically, if you haven't seen it, there's this ice queen with powers, and she's decided that she's going to escape. Her powers are too much for her kingdom, and she's going to escape this world, and she's going to go live off in the frozen wilderness, and she's going to make herself an ice castle. And so she sings this song, let it go, can't hold it back anymore.
That's
I have
beautiful,
the whole
Jimmy.
song memorized.
That's beautiful.
And
can I just say that the song works even better with your new hairdo? It's very princely.
Check out my hairdo.
Yeah.
Can you guys see it on the TV there?
Yeah. We all struggled with it at first.
Thanks, Shay. This is Shay Cummings' hairdo. It's rad. Bring back the mullet. So the song is called Let It Go, and it gives this feeling of the world is too much for me. I'm going to let it go, as though that's a positive thing. But how she's singing it is this let it go, and the song ends with, the cold never bothered me anyway. And she flings her hand and makes this wall of ice to block out the world. And I think a better name for that song would be Shut Your Heart Down and Never Love Again, right? And it's like, that's often how we deal with, like you guys are talking about how we deal with pain and how we deal with stress is like, just, man, if I could make an ice wall against the world and against the news and against you and against you and you, and the cold will never bother me anyway, you know? Whereas Benevolent Detachment, this chapter in John Eldridge is talking about you, like Mom was saying, you actually, your soul was not meant to take on all the worries and fears and cares of the world, which we do now because of technology and social media. And so you actually need to create space in your life where you detach, and you aren't detaching in like make an ice wall, like I'm mad at the world. You're detaching in a kindly, benevolent detachment way, where it's like, it doesn't matter. And who do we get this from?
Jesus.
Jesus. All the time in Scripture.
Yep.
Well, it was early in the morning. I forget where this is, somewhere in the New Testament. Well, it was early in the morning. The sun had not yet risen, and Jesus left and went up a mountain by himself. Or people needed him, and they were banging down the doors, and Jesus just left. Or they were trying to crown him kings, and he's like, no, it's not time, and he just left, right? Benevolent detachment. He didn't like make a wall. So I feel like for me, that's it, and that's why I try and take every other week and go hunting to just detach.
He's not being serious.
No,
he tries.
I'm not being serious, but I feel like it is something.
Yeah.
Others would call it a Sabbath, right? Like
Yeah.
without being religious, you actually need that.
Benevolent detachment.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
disconnect, right?
I was going to say something that Sarah and I have kind of discovered in the last little bit that's been really powerful, is whenever a worry surfaces in our minds, you're going to think this is so simple, but it's been actually really, really powerful. When something comes into your mind that you're worried about, it could be a financial thing, it could be something related to work or whatever, just right at that moment, just going, Jesus, I just bring this to you. It's so simple, and I feel almost silly even saying it, because like we should know this, but it seems like part of the strategy of the enemy is just to push that as far away from you as possible. And then Sarah and I will get together, we'll start talking about that thing, and then before you know it, our worry is amped up because we're 2 or 3 gathered together to worry.
It's not pretty.
There something is in the midst, and it's not the Spirit of God, that's for sure.
Right.
And so we've actually had to go, okay, wait a sec. We need to be just pushing this into prayer. And I've been really surprised at how simple it is. Like, it's not like a long prayer. It's just like, sometimes just I breathe the prayer right there. It takes me 5 seconds.
Right.
God, I give this to you. I declare it's not the giant that it's making itself out to be in my eyes, and that somehow you're going to make it work. And then it's been really cool. I'd say the last 2 weeks, hey?
Yeah. It's powerful, actually, just to submit it to Jesus and then to realize that that anxiety was gone. Not to say that it doesn't come back, but it works. Just that simple.
Yeah.
Breathing out that stress and breathing in Jesus.
Yeah, you can almost say like worry is anti-prayer. Like, it's almost like when you worry on something, it's almost like it's anti-prayer. And doing what we're talking about is just as simple as arresting now the anti-prayer is not happening.
It's a prayer to the wrong God, right?
It is.
Paul put worry and prayer as opposites.
Yep, he sure did. In Philippians chapter 4.
Yeah.
That's good, man. It's
Well,
what are there maybe 1 or 2 other things that we kind of do? We talked a bit about this.
You'll get a turn.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Vadim.
You'll get a turn. Just wait.
I'm facing this way, so I'm not seeing the.
for me personally, there's 2 extremes, and the extreme of like the world is so big around me, and I'm so small, and that it overwhelms me, whatever's happening there. So I need to benevolently detach. I need to kind of say, you know what, I can't bear this. The other extreme, where I find myself in oftentimes, is when my world, myself, is so big and the world around me is like tiny. So then actually what's happening to me is the most important thing. I don't care what's happening out there. And that's where I need to actually benevolently detach from myself, and actually see, wait a second, God created a much bigger world. Yes, he cares about me, my life. He has purpose for me. I'm experiencing these things. There's stuff happens, but I also need to understand, wait a second, God's world is much bigger, and his plans are much bigger than just being focused on my life. Yes, he is involved in our lives, but he's God of the universe. So just like detaching from myself and being able to see, okay, wait a second, I have neighbors that are also going through this trauma. I have, my coworkers going through trauma.
Who's that?
Yeah, who's that? So benevolently being able to detach, not to ignore what's happening inside of your heart. Obviously, you're like, I know what's happening, and I'm mindful of that. But I'm choosing to diminish what's happening to me at the expense of helping others. And I think that's also God's heart. The mission of God is to reach the world, and he's interested in all the nations of the world. He's interested to bless all of us. So he can't do that when we just focus on ourselves. He can only do it when we are able to detach and venture out into the open and see, wait a second, there's a big world out there. So benevolently detaching from myself.
Very good.
And yeah.
That's huge. I think that's a very good piece of advice to go like you're in the throes of this, you're inundated by worry and fear, is to pull back and go, there's a bigger picture. I think that, I'm thinking for us, as a team, how that's been relevant a number of times to go, because as a church, these are weird days. It's just so strange. We've often thought, wait a sec, we didn't sign up for this, this sort of detached kind of ministry that had been happening for so long, without the same interactions with people. But it always was helpful for me to pull back and go, I'm not the only one going through this. And you start to realize that the pastor that pastors the church across the street, he's dealing with the same thing. And I think what's really helpful is to realize that the person that has a different viewpoint than you on some of these things is dealing with the same level of worry and fear on a different level. And when you kind of have that big picture, I think it just kind of gives you a bit more grace. And it makes you feel, I think it was a Ziggy cartoon. I saw a Ziggy cartoon one time. And the whole caption was basically, he was just like, I just feel like 1 in a million. And somebody comes along and says, nah, you're one in a trillion or whatever. It's kind of like, you are nothing special. There's lots more going on than just your little world. Yet there's something really liberating about that too, to kind of go.
Yeah, and I think there's been a lot of scientific evidence, psychological studies, where they prove that if you are able to detach from yourself and go and help others, you're actually helping yourself. There's an excellent book written recently called Empathy, The War for Kindness, by a Stanford University psychologist, professor guy. Really good book. Recommend it to read that.
That's excellent. Well, I think it's been a super good conversation. What do you guys think?
Yes. Yeah. Can I say one last thing so fast? Ephesians 4, you preached on this a few weeks or months or years ago. One of them. I remember it though, as I remember all your sermons. And it says, finally, brethren, focus on whatever is true, lovely, noble, interesting word, good, right? And I think as Christians, this is not like forgetting that there is bad happening and stuffing your head under a rock, but that we need to work at focusing on what is good.
Right. Yeah.
And looking for the good. There's this quote, I think it's Bill Johnson. He says, fear will always find the facts it needs to back up its case, right? So it's like, if you're fearful, for sure, look around and you'll find some facts, to back up your case. That car crash or that vaccine or this happened or that happened, right? But I think as Christians, it's like, no, our mandate from Paul, Ephesians 4, focus on what is good.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean like be out of the know, like to head in the sand. But it's like, no, strive to it and know that it is everything in us that does not want to. It is everything in our culture that wants, like news sells, right? It's like it sells because it's dramatic, and they talk about the one car crash, but not the million people that made it to work safely, right? So it's like it's in our system to like find the bad. So I think as Christians, as people, it's like consciously making the decision that it's like look for the good, look for the noble, look for the excellent. Yeah.
That's super good. It's a head game.
Yeah.
You really got to win the war of the mind. Did you have something you wanted to add?
I've just been really challenged. This is kind of maybe off topic, but not really. But I just been super challenged just to be rooted and grounded in Jesus during this time. And I think when we're rooted and grounded in Him, I think I did inspired on a tree that was blowing in the wind, and you only can test those roots in the storm. And so for me, just going through the season, being grounded in His love, being grounded in Him, abiding in Him has been super key.
That's a good note to end on. And I think like on that note, if you're interested in the mentoring test drive, that's what that's all about, is learning in a vigorous way how to ground yourself in who Jesus is.
Yeah, and the link to the test drive will be in the comments, so you can find it there.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks for hanging in with us, guys. And again, hope to see you this Sunday, 10 o'clock. Come in a little bit early. We're just going to have a great time. It's gonna, if you want to get baptized, let us know.
Yeah.
Bring your kids. It's going to be a good time. So we'll see you then. Have a great weekend.
See ya.